Prime Minister Narendra Modi all set to address the nation at 8 p.m, a day after he had an interaction with Chief Minister. Sources say the Prime Minister is, of course, worried on the migrant labour crisis. He may speak on it in the evening and also on the state government suggestions on the lockdown and measures to be adopted for the future. What next after May 17th? Lockdown 3.0 completes. What next after? Let's quickly go over to Rahul Srivastav joining us for more details. Rahul, Prime Minister Modi all set to indulge in an address for the third time this evening at 8 p.m. and it's expected that he will make announcements on what next after May 17th. What's post the lockdown 3.0? A gradual exit, but at the same time focus on containing the virus. What do you expect is going to be part of his address?
Nabila, if you look at the tone and tenor of the meeting yesterday, the Prime Minister at the end of it was outlining the need for Jan and Jag, means people and the world. And in a very clear indication, with a lot of BJP states also backing the end of a lockdown, states being handed over more powers in terms of autonomy to decide their own distress zone and free zones. It seems increasingly that this Prime Minister's address today evening could well be a kind of a special Tuesday message in which he may talk about the broad roadmap ahead and hand over the larger nuts and bolts job for lockdown imposition, easing of curbs or creating restrictions to the states. And the general tone and tenor which emerged from the meeting of the Chief Ministers with Prime Minister yesterday, that the Prime Minister asked Chief Ministers to submit suggestions on kind of a revival roadmap, on how to take various sectors forward, how tourism can be boosted, how education can take newer forms of teaching. So one can say is that today in the evening, the Prime Minister may be talking about a wider revival, return to a normalcy package than announcing what he did in his first address in terms of a stringent lockdown.
But we're also expected that he's going to be mentioning the migrant crisis issue. We hear that that could be also part of this talk here. Remember, lakhs of migrants are currently stranded. This, of course, could be featured in his address today.
Nabila, yesterday in the meeting, the Prime Minister mentioned this fact. He said that when we had imposed the lockdown, our intention was that everybody should stay where they are. But he said in the meeting with the Chief Ministers that people, when they are out and in distress, they want to go back home. And that is why there was need to tweak the strategy. And that line from the Prime Minister, that there was need for tweaking the strategy, I think it is an indicator that the government is likely to tweak a lot of strategies when it comes to addressing the economy and the distress faced by the people. And if we see, already, despite slight reservations, a limited number of trains have already been started. And the government is indicating that within few days, a kind of a roadmap plan for restoring civil aviation services might also be starting. And that is why, if we look at it, that the tone and tenor from the meeting yesterday seemed graded exit, a kind of a calibrated effort where states might be doing the district-wise mapping and zoning, in which the center will be playing the role of a facilitator. And definitely, I think the Prime Minister's address may be more about a revival from beyond the last 54 days of lockdown and other activities.
Right. Here we also understand that Prime Minister is keen on ensuring that the economy jumpstarts. It's been over 40 days. We're looking at lockdown 3.0. The economy is struggling currently. And if at all, this word has now come from several of the chief ministers about how they want the lockdown to be extended. But many of the states have also shown concern about their shrinking economies. That will be a point of talk as well, do you think, Rahul? Because state governments are really struggling and asking for funds. And at the same time, the respective chief ministers and the Prime Minister are thinking of lifting the restrictions in a graded manner. So this is going to be quite a conflicting talk and a decision to make, really.
It's a balancing act, Nabila. The problem is that on one hand, you have, at a time when there were 600 odd cases, you had a complete lockdown. At a time when you have 65,000 cases, you're talking in terms of lifting the curve. It's a very risky job.
Absolutely.
And that is why, if you look at the meeting, from the messages coming from the meeting, the Prime Minister will have to talk about the economic crisis, because the economic crisis is something so staggering right now that if it is not addressed, it will have a much more lasting impact over the entire fiscal. And if we see last time around, when the lockdown announcement was made in form of a notification by the Home Ministry providing the guidelines, lot of restrictions were provided in the green and the orange zone areas, nearly 603 districts out of the 733 districts in the country. Lot of restrictions were eased, but a lot of business and economic activity could not start because of shortage of labor or supply chain issues. Now, those issues on the ground need to be addressed. So if the Prime Minister is going to announce today something, his address and the follow-up in terms of what the Home Ministry does will have to address a lot of these labor, supply chain, movement of people and other issues than remaining mere guidelines on paper dictated by the centre. And that's what the states have been saying over the last few days, that centre can't sitting there in Delhi decide which district or which area in their state should be labelled as hot zone or a red zone and other kind of categorization. And that's why I maintain that the Prime Minister's message may be overarching attempt for a revival and for a sense of restraint. Revival and restraint in terms of social distancing protocols.
Right. Rahul, it more looks like that the Prime Minister could indicate a lockdown extension, but this time with fewer curbs. Of course, the state governments have been given a lot of responsibility on planning an exit map, a roadmap of an exit plan post May 17th. Let's quickly go over to Maushami joining us for more details on this. Maushami, here is the Prime Minister all set to address the nation. Do tell us what is expected. Is it a signal of a lockdown extension, but with fewer curbs this time?
Nabila, the indications that we are already getting, if you look at the political discourse around the entire lockdown and the opinions of all states, there is a larger thinking that, a larger section believes that we need to deal with the fear psychosis, we need to deal with the paranoia surrounding this entire COVID pandemic. And importantly, there has been a stress from all sides to have a well thought out strategy. Even if it was the Punjab Chief Minister mooting for an extension of a lockdown, it was not at the cost of getting the economy back on track. And now the debate is actually going towards this side, that if you're keeping the lockdown, continuing the lockdown, it is at what cost? What cost to public health, what cost to the economic aspect of it, and how can you balance it out? So that is what the Prime Minister perhaps would be looking at, because they are actually posed with a big question when you have these lakhs of migrant workers going back home, and on the other hand you are talking about how are you going to arrange for the
Right. Maushami, do stay with us. We're going to come back to you. Well, this is, of course, a catch-20 situation for any government of any country. Here is Prime Minister Modi also, along with respective chief ministers of states, now in a point of confusion, whether to extend the lockdown or keep the lockdown, looking at the rising number of cases. Of course, the hints and the talk around is that the lockdown could be extended, but with curbs being eased in areas which is not as sensitive, in areas which is not considered as containment zones. This is going to be mostly the discussion and the talk, of course, during the address of the Prime Minister at 8 p.m. tonight. This is right after the marathon meeting that he's had with chief ministers. He's discussed on a strategy of how to exit this lockdown 3.0. All of the chief ministers have been given a responsibility to come up with their respective plans. Now, a comprehensive talk with this regard will be given in by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at 8 p.m. It's expected that he would touch upon all these aspects, including the fact that if the lockdown will be extended or not. Now let's take a listen in what Prime Minister had said in the last 2 months when the address was made. He addressed the nation twice before. What did he say previously with regards to the lockdown and how the country must show patience, restraint and resolve during this COVID-19 crisis?
जब प्रथम विश्व युद्ध हुआ था, जब द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध हुआ था, तब भी इतने देश युद्ध से प्रभावित नहीं हुए थे जितने आज कोरोना की इस बीमारी से हैं। पिछले 2 महीने से हम निरंतर दुनिया भर से आ रहे कोरोना वायरस से जुड़ी चिंताजनक खबरें देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं। 22 मार्च रविवार को सुबह 7 बजे से रात 9 बजे तक सभी देशवासियों को जनता कर्फ्यू का पालन करना है। पूरे देश में आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है। अगर ये 21 दिन नहीं संभले तो देश और आपका परिवार 21 साल पीछे चला जाएगा। चारों तरफ जब हर व्यक्ति एक एक दिया जलाएगा, तब प्रकाश की उस महाशक्ति का एहसास होगा जिसमें एक ही मकसद से हम सब लड़ रहे हैं, ये उजागर होगा।
Let's quickly go over to Prime Minister Narendra Modi there addressing the nation. Of course, a piece of information coming in here that the Prime Minister is all set to address the nation at 8 p.m. a day after he had a marathon discussion, interaction with respective chief ministers of across all of the states. Remember, all the state chief ministers have put forth their grievances and concerns. This is unprecedented situation across the country. The country has been on a lockdown over 40 days. This is the third phase of the lockdown, which will end on the 17th of May. Will there be a lockdown extension? Now, that's the all-important quintessential question that has been on the minds of every citizen in the country. Of course, the Prime Minister trying his best to ensure that people are alerted with every little decision and plan. He has been addressing the nation either through his Mann Ki Baat or an address that he has made last 2 times during the lockdown phases 1 and 2. This is the third address that he is going to be indulging in during this lockdown 3.0. Before it completes, he of course wants to sensitize people. That's what he's done the last 2 times as well. This time too, we're looking forward for Prime Minister Modi to come out. Remember, this is a crisis that every single government across the globe is facing. It's a crisis that the governments are tackling, which is unprecedented. Whatever measures that put in place won't be sufficient. Whatever measures that would be rolled out for now would be still less, looking at the magnitude of the problem here. So it is important that all people collectively come together to fight this pandemic, and that's precisely what Prime Minister Modi has been saying time and again, that this is a collective fight. It can't be fought individually, it can't be fought separately. United is when we get through this pandemic. Here, state governments across all parties, crossing party lines, have come forward together asking for an extension for the lockdown. Many states, in fact, many state governments have asked for a lockdown extension, including Andhra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu. We had many government chief ministers of different governments there coming forward asking for a lockdown extension because of the rising cases despite this lockdown. They only are worried if at all this lockdown is lifted completely, will the COVID-19 crisis emerge, break out to irreparable proportions. That's the worry. Considering the economy is also shrinking at the same time, how is it possible for the government to tackle the economic crisis as well as this COVID-19 outbreak? It's got to be a very thoughtful, a decision which is very thoughtful and collective. Maushami, coming back to you here, we understand that chief ministers have already asked for a lockdown extension. Many chief ministers have appealed for a lockdown extension. Many chief ministers have also opposed for flights to begin, opposed for trains to start. In fact, trains have already begun. Passenger trains have begun from Delhi to many other parts of the country today. And many of the chief ministers are opposing it because there's going to be a sudden influx of people from many of these containment areas into their respective states. So the talk is and the sense is that the lockdown will be extended, but this time the curbs will be fewer in those non-containment zones. What more can we expect this evening?
Right, Nabila, there is one big point that has been debated very much, and that's about the containment zones, the green zones, the orange and the red zones. So, economists feel that when you have a containment zone and in a larger setup, there is bound to be traffic from to and fro from the containment zone. So there have to be restrictions that need to be lapsed and actually relaxed to ensure that there is a smooth flow as far as, getting the economic activity back. Economists also feel, and that's been debated in government circles, that how much of the economy are we looking at opening up? Because if you're looking at opening up the industries and relaxing certain norms, are we looking at a long-term run or are we looking at just the short run? Because nothing can be more damaging than, relaxing the norms and then you have a catch-22 situation where there is a sudden spike and it goes out of control and they have to shut the industries and the economy back. So there is a lot of, there is a lot of speculation. There is a lot of skepticism as far as the lockdown extension and measures is concerned. And if you look at Prime Minister's speech, each and every time he's addressed the country, he has made a very, very important psychological outreach, an emotional appeal to remain psychologically strong. And the time has come when many believe that the psychological stress and trauma as far as this entire COVID crisis is concerned needs to be addressed. Perhaps we need to learn to live with this pandemic, and how we can live and survive and sustain is the big question that the Prime Minister is going to address today, Nabila.
Right. Of course, this is a mental battle. It is a point where we've got to show resolve and restrain, exactly the words that Prime Minister has used as well. We've got to show mental strength at a point of time like this when the entire world and the country is looking at unprecedented times. Here we understand that several of the chief ministers have discussed on how they're going to plan on exiting this lockdown in a manner which will ensure that the economy is kick-started. At the same time, the spread of this virus is contained. Both these situations are going to be very difficult for respective governments to maneuver through, but nonetheless, it is a decision to be made by respective state governments, because the Prime Minister has given responsibility to state governments now to make a decision based on severity of cases in their region. Of course, many metro cities have been considered as red zones. Remember, all of the metro cities, including Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Kolkata, Chennai, Ahmedabad, are all red zones. Now, in the marathon meeting just yesterday, the discussion was if at all these red zones can be curbs can be eased in these red zones except for containment zones. The entire district should not be declared as a red zone. Only containment zones must have strict vigil. Those are the talks that happened between the Prime Minister and the Chief Ministers. An all-important talk at 8 p.m. today is awaited.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.